Today we're going to talk about follow the money. And Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, the late Jeffrey Epstein, was a Russian operation. Okay, let's follow the money. That's how we know it was a Russian operation. And I believe this is where it becomes pretty obvious that Trump is a Russian asset of sorts. Okay, so if you go through the news reporting of this, you understand that Epstein had some business dealings, various types. He provided women, kind of like an escort service. He also helped to find investors. He got money to do investment in certain projects. And some of those projects and some of those people that he got involved with were, high tech people, Silicon Valley. We're going to talk about that. And so the women he procured were not only just, poor white women in Florida or girls in Florida, but they were also women from Eastern Europe. That includes Belarus and other countries in Eastern Europe. And CBS just recently did an article a couple days ago about some defects in the DOJ report on the Epstein death. And CBS said that on the night that Epstein died, he got off the phone talking to his Belarusian girlfriend. So, this thing has all the hallmarks of a Russian operation. Because the Russians have got a lot of money that they put into illegal activities, and they have a very real interest in trying to find out Silicon Valley secrets. They steal everything. So the guy who's really blowing the lid off of this is Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon, and he released on July 23rd a report that's on the U.S. Senate Committee on Finance website. Democrat, he's a ranking member, I believe, of the U.S. Senate Committee on Finance. And the title of the posting is As Trump Sits on Key Epstein Files, Wyden lays out follow the money investigation for Department of Justice. Years into his own Epstein investigation, Finance ranking Democrat recommends 7 major lines of investigation for Trump's idle Department of Justice. Trump's administration failure to properly investigate Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking network and financing. In a new letter today sent to Attorney General Pam Bondi, and Senator Wyden laid out 7 leads for federal prosecutors based on findings of his own years-long inquiry. So, quote, after reviewing the Epstein memorandum you recently published, it is obvious that the DOJ, and he's referring to the memorandum that the DOJ published, he said it is obvious that the DOJ failed to conduct a real investigation into the funding of Epstein's sex trafficking operation. In fact, I'm convinced the DOJ ignored evidence found in the U.S. Treasury Department Epstein file, a binder that contains extensive details on the mountains of cash Epstein received from prominent businessmen that Epstein used to finance his criminal network. Due to the DOJ's lack of thoroughness, I would like to offer a roadmap with a list of follow the money leads. Number 1. The Epstein file contains, actionable information on thousands of wire transfers and more than $1 billion flowing in and out of Epstein's accounts, all of which merit further investigation. It's actually 1.5 billion around there, and it's about 4,700 wire transactions. And many of them went to Russian banks that were sanctioned. And today there was a posting on X from Senator Wyden and some other people who watch him, showing that, again, over 4,700 transactions, many, if not most, to Russian banks. And so what's going on here? Well, that's what the Russians do. They finance operations to penetrate the United States, to get our secrets, to compromise our leaders. That's what the Russians do. That's what the KGB, or its successor now, the GRU, the FSB, does. He said, number 2, the DOJ Prosecutors and FBI agents should investigate why several ultra wealthy Wall Street financiers paid Jeffrey Epstein hundreds of millions of dollars. For example, billionaire Leon Black paid Epstein 170 million for purported tax on estate planning advice, far more than other professional attorneys and advisors involved in Black's estate planning. Number three, the Treasury Department's Epstein file contains information indicating that Epstein used several now sanctioned Russian banks for hundreds of millions of dollars in wire transfers. It appears that these wire transfers were correlated to the movement of women or girls around the world. I mean, this is what the Russian FSB and the GRU do. They promote vice around the world. Okay, number four, direct the DOJ to subpoena internal bank records related to Jeffrey Epstein. Some of the biggest banks in the world, including Bank of America, JP Morgan, and Deutsche Bank, processed billions of suspicious transactions that flowed through Epstein's accounts. Number five, direct DOJ and FBI to conduct an investigation into banks that failed to properly report large payments to Epstein in a timely manner. Federal anti-money laundering laws require banks to conduct due diligence on large transactions. The Finance Committee investigation found several major banks likely broke the law by only reporting large payments to Epstein, as well as after Epstein was charged. Number six, conduct depositions with bankers responsible for overseeing large accounts transacting with Jeffrey Epstein, especially relationship managers and the supervisors. They routinely had hundreds of millions of dollars in them in these accounts, and Epstein arranged for large inflows of cash from some of the wealthiest men in America, usually in large installments and tens of millions of dollars. The bankers are also required to conduct Know Your Customer reviews, and the DOJ must immediately conduct transcribed interviews with bankers overseeing Epstein's account. Number seven, subpoena documents from U.S. Virgin Island Attorney General related to the settlement agreement that gave Leon Black immunity from prosecution in the U.S. Virgin Islands for Epstein-related crimes. The U.S. Virgin Islands and billionaire Leon Black in 2023 signed a settlement agreement related to Epstein, and Black paid about $62.5 million in order to receive immunity from any criminal prosecution in the U.S. Virgin Islands related to Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operations. And one of the settlement assertions is Jeffrey Epstein used the money Black paid him to partially fund his operations in the Virgin Islands. Wyden goes on to say, I can say with a high degree of confidence that there's a lot of DOJ and Treasury Department. There's a lot that the DOJ and Treasury Department is not telling us about Jeffrey Epstein. It's clear more needs to be done, and it'd be inexcusable for you not to do that. So about $1.5 billion, 4,700 wire transfers involving Russian banks that finance the movement of women around the world and helped Epstein needs to be investigated. I mean, Epstein was clearly a Russian operative. And he's got, the purpose here is to get information that they can use to hurt American leadership. Okay. Okay. Craig Unger wrote a book, American Compromise. He also wrote House of Putin, House of Trump. I've talked about him before. Well, he's also been writing about this too. July 21st and July 23rd, he wrote a couple of articles, from Russia to Jeffrey with Love, parts 1 and 2. And so the title of the first part was Famous as the Girl Who Kissed Putin. Masha Drakova also worked for Jeffrey Epstein before she penetrated the Silicon Valley tech sector. Big question, is Masha another Red Sparrow? So Red Sparrow is somebody, working for the Russians. Two Russians working for Russian intelligence used Epstein to penetrate Silicon Valley, basically. One was Lana Poshadeva. She was a scholar, a woman empowerment advocate, tech entrepreneur, also known as Nashi, who was trained by MGIMO, which is Russian intel training, very highly sophisticated training. Poshadeva somehow ended up becoming a model who was represented by MC2, a modeling agency owned by Epstein, pimped to be Jean-Luc Brunel, known as Le Fantôme, and he was the subject of a 1988 piece that aired on CBS's 60 Minutes. This is just a sidelight here, but apparently Trump's current wife, I can't Melania, apparently was procured through one of these services. That's how Trump met her, through Epstein, because Epstein made her appearance known to him. And this is not in Craig Unger's piece, but this is from separate sources. Okay, Brunel was ultimately arrested December 2020 at Charles de Gaulle Airport. And in February 2022, he was found dead, hanging in a prison cell in La Santé in, um, in Paris. Pochadeva was featured prominently in Maxim Italia and Ukraine Vogue, moved to the United States, and began her association with Jeffrey Epstein. Once she got to New York, she became president of a New York based charity called Education Advance, which received most of the $56,000 in funding from Epstein to support education, science, and technology in 2017. And she said Epstein's donation helped to develop an impactful program at MIT. Okay. With Epstein's help, Pochadeva founded a New York based monthly event series for female entrepreneurs and professionals called We E Talk, standing for Women's Empowerment. Epstein also gave $50,000 to Pochadeva for the benefit of OpenCog Foundation, a project that aims to build an open source artificial intelligence framework. Epstein also gave her an opportunity to study and attend conferences with scientists. What she liked was that he donated a lot to science and helped researchers and interesting people. And Pochadeva did not respond to Craig Unger when he wanted more information. So Yuri Shvets is a former KGB, and he's an expert on how the KGB works. And Unger goes on to say that Shvets, whose work with the KGB entailed deep analysis of case files like Pochadeva's, said there had to be a simple explanation. And he says each intelligence officer operates under a so-called legend or a cover story. So this is like their official work history, which they show the world. The purpose of this is to cover up years that they spent training at the KGB or the FSB. So according to Shvets, the answer is that all of this involving Lana and involving Epstein been a part of a deliberate effort to introduce Lana to a network of scientists and to help her set up a charity that made lots of donations to companies associated with artificial intelligence. That leads Shvets to believe she worked as a penetration agent with the assistance of Jeffrey Epstein. She penetrated the network in the United States related to supercomputer and artificial intelligence. For Russian intelligence, it would have been like a Klondike to penetrate Epstein's network of tech people who work on artificial intelligence and supercomputers. It would have been the equivalent of penetrating the Manhattan Project in World War II. Similarly, a report from the Brookings Institute concluded that Russia's use of AI as a weapon can make its recent disinformation operations pale by comparison. AI has the potential to hyperpower Russia's use of disinformation, which I've talked about before, the intentional spread of false and misleading information for the purpose of influencing politics and societies. And unlike the conventional military space, the United States and Europe are ill-equipped to respond to AI-driven asymmetric warfare in the information space. That is especially so under Trump's regime, because Trump has dismantled our ability to oppose the Russians in the cybersphere. And there are a number of articles which I'm going to be talking about on Monday. Okay. Craig Unger went on to say, Nashi or Pochadova was managed by Vladislav Surkov, also known as the Great Cardinal of the Kremlin. And he writes, quote, Surkov was the brilliant puppet master who merged theatrical techniques with public relations to alter the way reality is perceived in Putin's Russia. Okay, that's what we're starting to see in this country. And this was the essence of the Trump-Musk insurgency, to change the way in which reality is perceived. You know, there's a deep state, there's QAnon, there's Pizzagate. You know, there's the 2020 election was rigged. Biden isn't helping people being hit with the bad weather. January 6th wasn't an insurrection. This is the same thing Trump and Musk have been doing here. Okay, well, Surkov is doing this in Putin's Russia. As one of the architects of hybrid warfare on behalf of Putin, he set out to destroy the very idea of reality and to undermine the whole notion of truth in order to create a never ending conflict about perception that helped the ability of Putin's regime to control and manage Russia. The result of Surkov's work was that it completely befuddled the opposition because the ceaseless flood of contradictory stories meant that no one knew what the enemy was up to or even who they really were or what was going on. This is very important because Steve Bannon a couple years back said we're going to flood the zone. We're going to flood the zone. Okay, so you're seeing the Russian methods and techniques here as employed by Surkov being used by Bannon, Musk, and Trump on the U.S. Okay, so another one of the Russians who, you know, worked with or was promoted by Epstein, who penetrated Silicon Valley, was somebody called Masha Drakova, who is the sister of Victoria Drakova, who is a partner of Nashi. Nashi being all these Russian names, being Pachadeva, who I talked about earlier. Okay, so Masha idolized Putin and launched her own online pro-Putin TV show in which she asserted that serving Russian intelligence is an honorable pursuit. In any case, by 2015, Masha moved to New York, went into public relations, serving various tech firms and other clients. For long, she was named a Forbes 30 under 30 honoree. Business Insider cited her as a top 50 PR pro in tech. You got to kind of wonder about some of these private entities. You know, what private magazines, like, what do they know? What don't they know? Who are they really working for? You know, you got to wonder about that. And so she did so well in 2017 that she set up shop as a founder of Day One Ventures, venture capital and public relations firm, where she became an angel investor in early stage Silicon Valley startups in Silicon Valley and promoted various people in the tech world. She said, I made more than six-fold cash return in the first 1.5 years through exits from Entech Lab, Acquired IO, and remaining startups. By August of 2017, Masha had taken on Jeffrey Epstein as a client. She approached Science Magazine about interviewing him. In May the following year, so this is 2018, Masha was also a featured panelist on one of Pachadeva's first talks addressing the paucity of women venture capitalists. Putin, as Craig Unger writes, Putin was obsessed with artificial intelligence, supercomputers, and other forms of cutting-edge technology, and Jeffrey Epstein's operation provided a perfect point of entry. After all, technology was high on Epstein's agenda, and his salon of Nobel laureates, Silicon Valley heavyweights, and celebrated academics constituted a fabulous assemblage of great minds. So what we're seeing here is, you know, Putin sees Epstein as an entree into Silicon Valley. All right. Now, Michael Wolff has written 4 books on Trump. He wrote 2 books, I believe, on Rupert Murdoch, and he was writing a book on Jeffrey Epstein. He had, I believe, 100 hours of tapes. And discussing things with Jeffrey Epstein. He got to know Epstein very well. And as I understand it from Michael Wolff, I watched a number of his interviews. He has said that, and I paraphrase, he said, you know, that basically Epstein and Trump were very good friends, at least until 2004. And then what happened is that Epstein wanted to buy a house, had Trump over to look at it, see what could be done. Trump went behind Epstein, bought the house for $40 million, and then a couple years later sold it to a Russian for, I believe, $95 million. So that, as some people say, is an example of money laundering. After that, Epstein and Trump became enemies. Wolff wrote about Epstein in his book that came out in 2019, the name of which I don't remember right now. And after that book came out, not long after that, Epstein was arrested in 2019. So this is under Trump's presidency. Trump's Department of Justice arrested Epstein, okay? And he was prosecuted by Trump's Department of Justice. Maureen Comey was the lead prosecutor. It's the daughter of James Comey. And the DOJ started talking to Epstein to find out what he knew about who. And then 10 days later, Epstein ended up dead. And this is from Michael Wolff's Instagram from July 27th of this year. Um, there are a lot of accusers of Trump who said that women who said that he attacked them, mauled them, did bad things to them, raped them. There's one woman, um, Katie Johnson, who claims that she was raped by Trump and Epstein when she was 13. And there was a facilitator called Tiffany Doe who supposedly has this information. And this comes from an NPR story done uh, on June the 21st of 2019 called All the Assault Allegations Against Donald Trump Recap. So that was about 2 months before Epstein ended up dead. And speaking of Epstein ending up dead, the CBS News story called CBS News Investigation of Jeffrey Epstein Jail Video Reveals New Discrepancies was published July 29th. Notes that there's some problems with the DOJ report, and I just summarize here. There was a way to get upstairs to where Epstein's cell was without being seen. Uh, Secondly, there were unidentified, at least one unidentified person in the photos. The video that was released by the Department of Justice was tampered with. It was missing 1 minute. Nobody knows if the Epstein cell was locked. And also the guards are just simply not, they're not talking to anybody. And of course, this was also the report where CBS revealed that Epstein was talking to his Belarusian girlfriend the evening that Epstein ended up dead. So Epstein has ties to the Russians. We know Trump has ties to the Russians. And I think that we have to take a look at this and follow the money, like Senator Wyden said, and find out why money that Epstein is controlling is going to sanction Russian banks. Thank you.